Right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Red Brothers Pod. It is just myself today, unfortunately, but I'll try keeping you guys entertained throughout. So make sure to leave a like and a comment and maybe a subscription if you're feeling cheeky. But yeah, Newcastle 3-2 versus Liverpool. Obviously, Liverpool being on the winning end of the game in quite lucky fashion, if I do say so myself. I think um, the best place to start is the performance, and the first half an hour of the game, Newcastle were the way better team. Anthony Gordon had about two or three half chances that, on a better day, could have ended in two or three goals for them. So obviously, wasn't an ideal start, but I think this is something me and Alex touched upon, is that the first sort of 25-30 minutes of the game were always going to be a lot more scrappy, and it's just going to be about mellowing that crowd down, because obviously going into it with the whole sort of story around this game, the fans were going crazy last night, and it's a Monday night kickoff under the lights, bank holiday, beers rolling, so it was a hostile atmosphere, and Liverpool had to deal with it. And I think that obviously a lot of the credit went to Newcastle for how they played, but that's, as an away team travelling away in the league, that's how you want to start your performance. You want to mellow out the crowd, you know, put a bit in doubt in them, make them feel that they're not sort of going to come there and roll us over. And yeah, obviously around 34 minutes in, Gravenberch hits a pot shot from about 25-30 yards out, and it rolls perfectly into the bottom corner. And that's exactly what I sort of said going into the game. We'd see a lot of scrappiness and back and forth in the first half hour. We'll just need to try control the game as best as possible and calm that crowd down, and then the quality should shine through, and that's exactly what we've seen. Obviously, a great bit of quality from Gravenberch, a very unlikely scorer, but it was a lovely finish. And yeah, obviously rattles in off the post, and that gives us a strong position going into the second half, where, of course, Anthony Gordon is then booked with a red card. Now, you know, for me, there's no debate whatsoever. It's clear and obvious, be a red. The contact was just under Van Dijk's knee, and he pulled his sock all the way down to his ankle. So, the impact was definitely there. You can definitely tell he meant it. Who chases a ball like that to the goalkeeper, then to the centre back after already running down the left back? Right back in that instance. And it's something that I think was very silly by Gordon. And I think it's very fair to say now, after watching the full 90, that it's probably what cost them the game. So yeah, it's ironic that it's an ex-Everton player that gets sent off, and ultimately helps us win the game. But yeah, obviously that slightly weakened Newcastle going forward with a lack of Isak. They were already looking poor in them forward positions, so it definitely worked in our favour. And then, yeah, go into half-time, 1-0 up, everything's happy, we're cruising. Come out for the second half, 20 seconds in, Ekatike gets another goal. So, again, from that perspective, that's when I thought we were all done. It could be 3 or 4 here for Liverpool, and the game kind of just stagnated. I think instead of sort of putting our foot down further and going for a third and ultimately killing the game, we just sort of let them have a little bit of that momentum back. And it's very lucky for their first goal. I think it's a long throw that goes into the box, gets deflected out. First time cross from Livramento, if I'm not mistaken, and a lovely header from Guimaraes. Don't get me wrong, the finish was definitely of high quality, but I think how we got there was a little bit lucky, and I don't think that. Well, I don't think there's much we could have done, but there's definitely players in there at fault in different times. So, yeah, I think it's just an unfortunate goal to concede. Long set pieces, long throw-ins are difficult to deal with begin with, never mind when you've got the likes of, Dan Burn and some of the other really big players Newcastle have. So, yeah, obviously they took advantage, capitalised on that and brought it back to 2-1, and then turns out to be another set piece that cost us the second goal, which is where Asula, of course, scored. And, I think it's definitely a bit concerning now that 2 game weeks in a row we have dropped a 2 goal lead. But just as much as that's sort of a negative and it's concerning, it's also a massive positive and very promising that we've still managed to get the 3 points from them positions. Um, you know, it, what happened yesterday was absolutely ridiculous, and my only concern with it is it sustainable? Over the course of a 38 game season, if we've had to dig this deep for the first 2 games, is that something we can keep doing all season long? His history would say no or yes, depending on the team, of course. But if anyone could win a league like that, it would be us. So that's definitely encouraging in that way. But yeah, I mean, just go sort of going back to the defensive problems. What I personally think is our key issue is Ibu Kanate. Clearly this contract talk and Real Madrid talk is something that's quite largely affecting him on the pitch at the minute because he's not been himself, and it's been a massive point of concern in our defence over these last 2 games because of the amount of silly mistakes, the passes that he makes that get cut out and then leave us left out. It's very difficult at the minute to judge this situation because Leone is brand new to the club. Obviously, you don't want to throw him right in at the deep end, especially not away at St James's. And, the other centre-back option at the minute is Gomez, who isn't fully fit. And, potentially I see him as more of a right back than a centre back at the minute. But yeah, obviously the options there. It'll be interesting to see what happens around Gahey for the rest of the window. But I think that Konate's form at the minute is definitely not the best, and it's something we need to consider. And the overall team performance, I think a lot of the first sort of half hour, as much as it was about calming the crowd down and, eventually getting that first goal, I think the performance still wasn't good enough because you can calm a crowd down by, passing it around, holding possession, doing nice little intricate play. That's not the way we did it. We sort of let them have their chances, hoped that they didn't go in, and then just went, yeah, let's flick a switch now. And that's almost what happened. 30 minutes in, we took over the initiative, obviously 5 minutes after Gravenberch gets a goal, and that opens it up fully for us. So, yeah, I think that the first half hour is definitely of concern, and the majority of the second half, because after we get that second goal, again, the game really opens, and I don't understand why we would allow that to be the case again. You've got a 2 goal lead away at St James's. It's not an easy thing to do, so you protect that with your life. But obviously, yesterday that wasn't something that the players were really too interested in doing. So, luckily, we have a very special someone called Rio Ngamoa. So, he comes on 100th minute, 16 years old, and he finishes it first time, middle to bottom right corner, and it's just the most scenic moment you've ever watched in football. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I can't remember the last time I celebrated a goal like that, and the fact that it was Rio Ngamoa out of all people as well just makes it 10 times better. And over pre-season when me and Alex were watching it, we were saying that he should get a chance in the first team. Why not? He's clearly got the redeeming factors of a quality winger, so let's give him a go. And obviously, in his first Premier League appearance, with one of his first touches in the Premier League, he's gotten a goal for us, which was yet again an 100th minute winner. So it's just crazy to see, and unbelievable the reaction from that. Watching Rio run off and give it to the Newcastle fans just made it even better. And yeah, just sort of now, as we've got the storyline of the game covered, I think going into a bit of the storyline around the game going into it, Newcastle's midfield got largely bigged up for the game. Obviously, Tonali, Guimaraes and Joe Linton. And I think that Guimaraes was brilliant, the best player on the pitch in my opinion. However, Joe Linton comes off injured and Tonali comes off injured. So, after weeks and weeks of Newcastle fans going on about how Tonali and Joe Linton will kick the shit out of everyone and that St James's is going to be a bloodbath, it just so happens that both of them came off injured. So, I think that's a good example to Newcastle fans why you let the football do the talking and not your mouths, especially if you're not playing. Because, yeah, obviously two scary blokes, both got injured, both came off crying. You know, never wish injury or illness to anyone, but it was definitely nice to see Joe Linton coming off and being upset after all the bigging that everyone was giving it. You know, Newcastle's owner tweeting on Twitter to get stuck into him and stuff. It's embarrassing, really. You know, the whole storyline around this rivalry is fabricated. As a Liverpool fan myself, I don't care for Newcastle. Don't get me wrong, bragging rights definitely. I wanted to win that game. Obviously, the Isak custody match, it all plays into it. So don't get me wrong, it's always nice to win, always nice to get 3 points, but there wasn't necessarily extra sort of pressure added to there by us, and I think that's exactly what Newcastle did and ultimately what cost them. Because when you hype a game of course it is still a game of massive magnitude, but when you hype a game up to this magnitude and you know the players go out there, they will make silly fouls, they will make these mistakes because they're not thinking with their brains, they're thinking with their hearts, they're thinking with, you know, all that hurt and that emotion that's been coming out of the ground and out of the training facility. So that's what they were playing with last night, whereas, you know, Liverpool could play a bit more with their head. Of course, it's difficult when they keep fouling. Of course, sooner rather than later, you know, your head might go too, but I think we did a better job at being composed, and I think that a lot of people forgot about how important composure is and actually thinking when playing football is, because you know when you see red in your mind like Gordon clearly did there, that ends up being the result. So obviously I think that Newcastle sort of created that situation for themselves. I definitely saw a red card in this game. I personally thought it would be one of the midfield three for Newcastle for a double yellow booking, but you know I definitely saw a red card come in and it was definitely a red card. There's no debate in that. Like I mentioned earlier, it just catches him just under his knee, down the back of his thigh. So the foot's high, it's on a straightened leg. He drags his studs all down Van Dijk's calf and, yeah, gets himself sent off, which, you know, the Newcastle fans were almost asking for. So, yeah, I think it's very interesting how it played out. Obviously, with all of that they were talking about and all of this aggression and negativity, it's interesting that you know they got a man sent off, their midfield end up injured, and we've walked out of there with 3 points. But that's all you can really ask for, and you know it's definitely going to be interesting how we look for the next couple of games. Obviously, Arsenal on Sunday is going to be a massive one. It's pretty much a title challenge game in, you know, August, so that's going to be well, that'll be September now, sorry, but yeah, either way. So yeah, obviously massive game on Sunday. It's going to be against Arsenal. You know, we're still in September. Fuck's sake. Right, so massive game obviously coming up on Sunday with Arsenal coming to Anfield, and you know it's almost a title challenger in August, so it's crazy to see that you know the season's already shaping up this way, with obviously the Saka injury, Havertz being out, Odegaard being out. You know, it definitely opens the door for us to get a good result, and you know hopefully not another draw, because I've had enough of those against Arsenal. But yeah, obviously I think there will be a lot of things that we do need to work on as the season goes on, but I also do have full hope and sort of trust that Slot will be able to go over that with the team and, you know, iron out those creases. And, you know, when this team is fully built and it is gelled, it is going to be really scary. And if we can go to St James's Park, where not a lot of teams win, and still get 3 points when we play like that, then the rest of the league should be very concerned, because if we can do it there, we can do it pretty much everywhere. And, another stat that will back that up is that since Eddie Howe has been in charge, Newcastle have only lost 12 home games, and he's been in charge for years now. So obviously in that case, it shows how rare a win is away at Newcastle. And obviously, Newcastle in general, home or away, it was a game that, ruined Arsenal's title challenge a couple of years in a row. And, it can always be a tricky one on the calendar. So definitely having that away game behind us now is encouraging, knowing we don't have to go back there till next season, unless of course we meet them in the cups. But yeah, obviously the key focus again, 3 points, Rio Ngamoa winner, Salah assist again, and a Slot masterclass with his substitutions somewhat. So just going into sort of some of the player ratings for the game. Start off with Alisson. I think that he was okay. Didn't necessarily sort of pull us out of any trouble, or at the same time put us in any trouble. So I think a 6.5, maybe a 7 is probably fairest for him. Pardon me. If we're looking at right back, obviously Szoboszlai started, and he's personally one of my contenders for man of the match. For me, he gets a 9. Obviously, started at right back, played deep in midfield, even played as a 10 at the end, and provided that vital dummy, for Rio Ngamoa to come in and score on the back post. So very, very important performance, and almost an iconic performance. The headband, the hair, the kit number, the number 8, the long sleeve top. It's just iconic, and for him to have a performance like that across the whole pitch, it was unbelievable, and definitely one of the key reasons as to why we won. Now moving on to centre backs, Ibu for me gets a 5. He was shocking. Gets caught out for their second goal. On the first one, I think that was Kirkes that did poor on that one, but again, yeah, not much to do with Konate, that one, but the second one definitely was. I think it's his responsibility there to get the ball away before it gets to the position that the striker can get a shot away. So for me, he gets a 5, just all round not great, and it's sad to see because he is one of my favourite players, but we can't tolerate these types of performances for much longer. Moving on to Verge, who was my other contender for man of the match, he also picks up a 9. Absolutely everything that Newcastle threw at him, he dealt with, and again, a massive factor as to why we win that game, because even between minutes 90 and 100, Newcastle were all over us, and every ball that was coming into the box, it was either Alisson or Van Dijk getting their head or fist on it and getting it out and getting us out from under pressure. So Van Dijk was one of my key points there. I think he was great with progressing the ball as well. There was a lot of passes into the midfield that came in, and obviously the midfielders could use that turn and then spread it out to the wings. So I think it's really encouraging with Van Dijk again. We're sort of seeing a better him than we did against Bournemouth, that's for sure. And then Kirkes at left back, who unfortunately for me gets a 6. I think he wasn't bad all round. Again, throws himself in challenges, which I absolutely love. But personally for me, he can get a 6 because he is at fault for their first goal, where of course Guimaraes towers over him and he sort of kneels down, bends over, and Guimaraes just takes the full position and gets the goal. So yeah, it's poor from him. I'm sure it's something that they'll be looking at in training on how to position better in those situations, and hopefully we won't see it again. But moving on to another one of those man of the match contenders, I mean, there's a couple of 9s and then diabolical ratings across the board today. So as you can tell, there was some key performers, but Gravenberch gets a 9 for me as well. Chips in with the goal. He was massive at getting us up the pitch and, intercepting the ball, which from their midfield isn't the easiest task on earth. So, yeah, definitely a good performance from Gravenberch again. I'm glad to finally see him on the score sheet. I believe his last goal was Fulham away, where he absolutely rocketed it, top right corner. But that was now in 23-24, so we're talking a long time ago. So, yeah, definitely a good goal, and a good goal to add to his catalogue of already impressive goals. So yeah, another one for Gravenberch, another great performance, and I think he did show a lot of difference that was made by him being there, as opposed to the Bournemouth game last weekend. So yeah, definitely great to see him back. Now next to him we obviously had Jones. Now with Jones I'll give him a 7. I think he was really great, really good at sort of tracking back and also covering for Szoboszlai on that right flank when needed. There was a couple of times where he ended up as the right back and Szoboszlai went a bit into midfield, and Jones just sort of came out and played the ball out the back there. So yeah, I think gets a 7. Didn't do anything wrong, but also nothing crazy. But I think he was really good at, again, driving us up the pitch, keeping that ball, distributing it out, and a few key attacks that he was involved in. Now Wirtz for me, it was a better performance than Bournemouth, I think, slightly, but it still wasn't what we want to see from him. Again, I'm sure we'll see it very shortly, and he just sort of needs time a little bit to get up to speed almost. I think with the price tag we obviously paid for him, you expect that transition to be seamless. And yeah, of course, you'd probably be right, but at the same time, I do also understand that he needs time. So, it's also encouraging what me and Alex said last episode is that, even if these players aren't at their full 100% brilliance, they can still chip in with contributions or still not even stand out as the worst player on the pitch or something. So, even these sort of players, their bad games are, of a similar level to some of the other players in the league's good games. So, it's all about perspective and how you perceive it and view it. But in my opinion, there's definitely room for improvement, but we're not losing out by having him in the 11 at the minute. So that's always important as well. You don't want him to have the other effect and be a negative effect on the team. But yeah, again, it was very interesting to, just like with everything, to sort of see how it will all unfold going into the new season with all these signings and everyone coming in. So yeah, he gets a 6.5 from me. And moving on to Salah, I think he gets a 7.5. Obviously, gets that crucial assist for Rio and Gamoa. But he was a bit toothless the whole game. There was one that he put on the plate for Jones, which I think Jones could have done better with. So again, we could be talking a whole different conversation right now if that goes in. But yeah, 7.5 for Salah. I think it's justifiable, and the assist did increase that. So yeah, no complaints there. In terms of Ekatike, for me, he gets a 9 as well. Gets the goal. Actually, I'll give him an 8.5 because he does get the goal, but I think that at times in the link-up, there was a few sloppy passes there and bits where he got dispossessed. So again, I think he can do even better than that performance there against Newcastle. So his ceiling is sky high, and I think 8.5 is fair for last night's game. And then moving on to Gakpo, who gets the assist for both the first and the second goals. Again, 7.5, I think, 2 assists, played an all-round decent game. It's what you expect of Gakpo, very direct, always looking to shoot, always looking to assist, and that's what you want from your left winger. You don't want a left winger like a Grealish per se, where, they're going to go to the byline, chill out there, pass it back to the fullback, wait to receive the pass again, maybe 2 yards further up the pitch. That's not the wingers I like to watch. I love Gakpo, I love Rio, I love Salah, Diaz, all these wingers that just drive and get involved and look for those goals. That's my type of player. So Gakpo is always in my good books, and I think that, again, another really good performance. Obviously, 2 games now, 3 assists and 1 goal, so very good stats from him. And yeah, that would move us on nicely onto the subs bench, where of course we saw, there's only one place to start actually, Rio Ngamoa. Personally, Szoboszlai gets man of the match for me, or Van Dijk, but I'm going to give Rio a 10 because he was on the pitch less than 10 minutes and he scores the most important goal of the game to put us 3-2 up. So he gets a 10 from me. Just perfect. Poetry in motion. So yeah, not much more to discuss there. Just absolutely brilliant. And moving on to Elliot, I think he was good for us. Again, small sample size, so he'll probably get a 6.5. But what I won't forget is that he was a massive part of that Rio goal, the last goal. He was part of that sort of tiki-taka move that saw us get into the box in the first place. So for me, that's why he gets a zero 0.5 upgrade on his rating just for being involved. And I think the same can go for Chiesa, and Bradley. Both of them get a 6.5 from me. I think they were both sort of okay when they came on. Again, didn't do nothing wrong, didn't do nothing special, but also, again, they were both involved in Rio's goal, so for me, they automatically get a 0.5 upgrade in their rating. And then Endo came on. Pardon me. Endo came on, which I didn't know he came on. The goal came in, I was screaming, running around the house, celebrating. I come back to the TV, and apparently Endo was on the pitch. So for the 2 minutes that he was on, he can get a 6.5 and all. So yeah, I believe that's sort of everything on the sub side. Now, touching a little bit on Arne Slot, just before we wrap this video up, I think it's difficult because he doesn't have the squad that he wants yet, and you can see that. The lack of another striker and another centre-back is very prominent because at the minute he's forced to play Konate, Leone's not ready, Gehi's not here yet, so obviously it takes away his options at the back. And going forward, every time we sub Ekatike off, we look a lot worse off for it. It seems like we don't have that man up there that's able to just hold the ball up and bring others into play. So I think that, it's definitely two things that we are looking to rectify in the squad. And, with the transfer window closing on Monday and it being Tuesday now, we'll have to see what all the rumours are about, obviously, Isak and Gehi. But I'm pretty positive that we can get it done. It will be tight, but I think that there's no way that certain actions that have happened up until now, such as Nunes leaving, such as Diaz leaving, and all these other factors, I just don't think we allowed them to happen without having an understanding or maybe something even pre-agreed to say that Isak's joining. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that side. But, again, just as much as you can criticise Slot for how the substitutions affected us negatively, you can also praise him for how they all got involved in the third goal, and obviously the substitute finishes it off. So I think that one's pretty open to debate, but I'll personally give him a 7. Obviously gets us the 3 points. The substitute does bring the winner in, but I also do think there are a lot of problems that we need to have a look at, maybe over that international break. If we can get into there with a win over Arsenal when we're still playing like this and all 9 out of 9 points, then I think that would be really encouraging. And obviously, if we can then slightly improve defensively after that international break, I think we are going to be a problem for a lot of teams this year. But again, we will have to see about that. But yeah, I think that's just about everything I did want to cover today. So thank you very much for tuning in yet again, guys, and we shall see you after.